Hey guys, what's up? This video is going to be the first in the higher level Civ specific video. So this video is going to be once again Greek. I'm going to kick it around back to Greek after doing one for each Civ and then a couple stops in between. So this is going to be Greek 201, and this video is going to focus on the matchup between Greeks and Celts. This matchup presently is, I don't want to say it's terribly imbalanced, but I think it's pretty darn hard for Celt to win this if Greek plays correctly. I've played this matchup maybe 10 or 12 times in the past 2 days, and of the 12 times I've played, including games with Sam and Mista and various other Celt players, I think I've only lost maybe 3 games and won, I don't know, maybe 9. Which I don't think necessarily means I'm a better player than them. I think it just means that this matchup is potentially more difficult from the Celts side. So we'll be looking at this a little bit, and I also want to clear up some of the stuff that I see a lot of people suggesting on the forums that they want to try in this matchup that I think is pretty wrong, and I'll show you what some of those spots are. So as you can see, the opening, I've adjusted my opening a little bit. The starting 3 villagers have gone to food like normal. I'm going to pause it here for a second. The starting 3 villagers have gone to food like normal. The next villager coming out of the town center has gone directly to the wood patch, followed by the next 3 villagers after that as well. So ideally you would have 4. You can see here I make a mistake and I actually have 5, but ideally I've been going 3 to food, 4 to wood. This one comes over here to build the storehouse on the second hunt, and then the next villager after that as well. So ideally you would go 3, 3, 2, and then the rest on wood until you age. And that should let you age right at 13 pop. And you can see I still age up at 13 pop here. I idle for about, I think, a second or 2, which had I flipped those 2 villager orders around, probably wouldn't, well, it definitely wouldn't have happened. I would have had about, I don't know, 215 or some odd food when I aged up. So you can see that I made a slight mistake there, but no big deal. All's fine and good. Do I actually go 14? No, I don't go 14, I go 13. So you can see there are just a couple seconds that I idle. You can also see another thing that I've done here is when I take this villager, I want you to see this villager. This villager here, you can see she's low HP, and she was the villager that was fighting against the crocodile out front, if you notice that. One thing that is good to adapt into anyone's gameplay is picking up on little things like that. So, note, that villager is going to be a very easy target to raid, and so I didn't pick her blindly. She was specifically picked to go back and build the gold mine because of the fact that she has low HP, and because she has low HP, for the early raid, she's going to be an easy target for a longsword raid. It's only going to take 1 or 2 hits on her to kill her, whereas opposed to the rest of my villagers, it's going to take anywhere between 5 and 6 hits to kill them. So to kind of keep her safe, I specifically choose her, and I send her back, and I choose her to build on the gold mine. And just like noticing little things like that and picking up on just little things like that are really like things that start to separate good players. And knowing how to do, or just, you know, adapting to little tiny things like that can really enhance your gameplay and really, you know, or from the other side, you know, Sam being a good player, me knowing that he's going to see that. He's going to see that villager's low HP, and he's going to go for it. I guarantee you that in this game, he noticed there was a low HP villager there. So, that's just both of us being aware of our situation and adapting correctly. So you can see the build here that I've started to do against Celts, if I go back to my base anytime soon, is quite a bit different than what I had originally been doing in the Greek 101 video. The Greek 101 video, I've been building racks before age up, and getting a couple spearmen to harass / defend, and then aging up moderately late at around 16-ish pop, with a few more villagers. The reason why I've cut that and changed that specifically against Celts is those early spearmen really play no role against the Celts. Because the Celts don't have any cav unit in age 2, there's really no reason to be making a couple spearmen. And it took me actually losing and getting harassed by really early longswords harassment, and playing that matchup enough times to realize that the timing for the early longsword raid and harass was really causing me quite a bit of trouble, to realize that, hey, if you cut that Rax and you age up 2 villagers earlier, you can get the archer range down just as his first longswordman or 2 are coming into your base. So we'll kind of play that out and kind of see that timing. Note that I still get the wood chopping upgrade, which is super important, but also notice that I hold off on the gold mining upgrade until, boom, right now. Make sure that you get both of your military buildings down before you get the wood upgrade. It may seem insignificant, because you can see, I mean, I've got another 100 or so coming in now that, it would have only been, say, 5-10 seconds, but those 5-10 seconds, especially early against that early longsword harass, can actually be quite detrimental to your early game. So hold off on the gold mining upgrade until after you drop your barracks, and then get it after that. But you definitely do want to get it as soon as you possibly can. So notice I'm running my scout back a little bit to the left side, because once again I know that my back side here is a little bit more exposed than, say, my front side is, which is pretty much protected by military buildings. And then I've got this wall of houses that kind of walls off my wood line. So notice how my first unit is getting waypointed right back to where that hunt is, because I deem that to be, even though it's behind my base and off to the side, I deem that to be probably my most vulnerable area, and so I want to make sure that I defend that right away, and we'll see what happens almost immediately after that. So building houses, make sure you don't get pop capped, all the normal good stuff, just kind of pushing that scout off my barracks so you can't scout as much, and then you can see on the minimap, here comes that longswordsman. And so, by realizing that that harassment was going to come, and having the archer there, I pretty much get a free longsword kill. So those are just little things like that that you can pick up on that are going to just improve your gameplay by so much. And then just normal things, all the normal things, keeping your wood line good and spread out, having good storehouse replacement, all that kind of good stuff. Definitely just the fundamentals, the basics that if as long as you have those things all working for you, you're going to be fine and dandy. So that's kind of the opening look you want to go for. You want to go Rax right after archery range, and you want to make Hypaspis and Toxotai. And the reason you want to make that composition, as we said before, is there's no spearman point in this game. I mean, he doesn't have cav unit. They are only really good against cav, and might as well just kind of skip them if we're going all together. So I poke in here, see what he's got. I see that he's building a second barracks. That's kind of to be expected. He's got a decent amount of slingers, but pretty much regardless of what he's building there, unless he's gone triple racks, which I knew he hadn't, the stable is going to follow immediately. And I want you to note the stable placement here as well. The stable placement easily could have been out here. That would have helped start to wall off this choke a little bit better. It could have been in a defensive wall back here. It could have been back by my hunt, standing. It could have been almost anywhere, but instead I specifically choose to put it almost right on top of my town center. And the reason why I do that is twofold. One, because I know his scout is low HP, and because his scout is low HP, he's pretty unlikely to run right into the middle of my town and scout that. And I want to prolong that, giving him vision of that stable for as long as possible, because the longer he doesn't think I have a stable, the more likely he is to continue building slingers. So I continue the building wall with the houses, I continue the good spread with my units to keep the longsword raids off me, and then I sneak that stable right in the back there by my town center, trying to keep that hidden as long as possible, hiding tech. Took a break for water there. Got house popped a little bit for a second. But yeah, just kind of continuing to make units, continuing to macro up. The one thing that you want to really make sure of in this matchup is that you're patient. There's never any need for Greek to rush pretty much any matchup. And the reason that is because they've got the better late game. There's no real need to force an issue. If the longer the game goes, the stronger you get. If you get my drift. There's really no need for me to go and force, try and force the issue. If I'm just going to get stronger as the game goes. And there you can see the scout sneaks in there. He sees the stable, which is the right play by him. He probably knows full well that he's going to lose his scout, and he does lose his scout. But he does see the stable, and he sees the rest of my military tech. So he kind of knows what I'm doing now. He knows that I've gone 2 barracks, 2 archery range, 1 stable, which is pretty standard for Greek in this matchup. One thing I do see a lot of people do is they forgo the stable. And forgoing the stable, although it gets kind of hairy, I'm going to say, if you don't go to the stable. The reason why it gets kind of hairy if you forgo the stable, true, if you fight in big masses, Hippospis Tox against Celts does work. It does work. I'll give you that. It does work. But what doesn't work is when the Celt refuses to fight you head on. And what I mean by that is, because Celts have such innate move speed on their infantry, and if you're not making cav to run around between their groups of infantry and slingers, they can kind of play like a hide-and-go-seek poke war with you, and they can hit your wood line from one side and then hit your gold mine from another side with 2 little split-off groups of army, and never really fully engage you, but just keep forcing your army into awkward situations back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and kind of wearing you down and picking off stray units. And the mobility of the cav, and even just having a couple cav, keeps them from kind of doing that, because every time they try and retreat, if you're just infantry, they can run away from you because they have 7.3 move speed to your 6.6. But if you have cav, they can't really do that because your cav can kind of chase and pick off some slingers, and then you kind of run them back to the other side, and they kind of lose their mobility advantage. Which is good. And now you can see here I start to push. So I know I had said up to this point that I had said up to this point that I had been very defensive, but I've said this to Sam many times. At 90 pop, pretty much regardless of what civ I'm at, I don't know what the reason is, but regardless of what civ I am, at 90 pop, I feel like I have to do something, because at that 8-minute mark is kind of when almost each civ is kind of able to age up and start to do different things. And up before that point, you're kind of not forced into staying age 2, but you're kind of forced into at least like remaining relevant and making enough stuff so you don't die. But come 8 minutes, 9 minutes, you're kind of able to definitely branch off and kind of do different stuff. So around 90 pop, if you're macroing well, around 8 minutes or 90 pop, you should kind of take a peek. You don't necessarily, with Greeks especially, don't full-on engage if you don't think you can win. For example, if he had been spamming pure units at this point, I probably would not want to engage because he would probably have more units than I do. But looking at his army right here, it doesn't really scare me, and so that makes me think he's probably aging. I mean, he doesn't have that many units. I definitely have more units than he does, which either means he's been macroing poorly, which, judging by the scores, I don't think he's macroed that poorly, or it probably means that he's aging up, and the way that he's kind of staying behind his base and playing defensively and hasn't been meeting me out in the middle of the map trying to flank me and do kind of, you know, those kinds of maneuvers, pretty much solidifies my opinion that he's aging. So you can notice I have the ticker tab open, and the reason I have that open is specifically so I can see when someone ages, and I believe it pops up here just as I'm pushing into his base that indeed he has aged. And so this is really pretty much the ideal timing push for me. I've pushed into his base, I've got all my units on his side of the map exactly when he's aged up. Now, what he's trying to do is he's trying to buy enough time so he can get upgrades on his units and get shadow tech units out. And what I want to do, my goal is to kill as many of his units as possible before they get upgraded and before they get strong. And so you can see I kind of try and keep all my units relevant and interested in the fight, try and keep new units pouring in, while at the same time trying to, you know, hit a little... I don't really mind hitting villagers as well, because, you know, his eco is going to be kind of fragile. He's just spent a lot of resources aging up, and if I can kind of damage his economy as well as killing most of his units, then I'm going to be pretty good off. So you can see I've killed most of his infantry, starting to get out woad raiders, and so at this point in time, you know, I've kind of done, you know, the damage that needs to be done. I've made him run all of his villagers off of resources. I've delayed some of his buildings coming up. I have killed a bunch of units before they get shadow teched, or before they get teched up. I've kind of kept the pressure of raids off me for a while because I've just kind of forced him to stay into his base. And so you can see here I dropped some more buildings myself, and then what do I look to do? I look to age. Now, there's a couple things I could do here. I could just continue to spam units and sit in my base and be patient and just go for another timing push with, say, military upgrades, say from the armory, or I can age, and I think aging is probably definitely going to be the better bet here, and we'll see how that plays out. But he's gotten to age up. I don't think he's got any stone because I didn't see anything on his stone mine, so that doesn't mean, that pretty much tells me that he's not going to be much over 140 pop, well, he's not going to be over 140 pop at all. Which means his economy's not going to get any stronger, which probably means I'm ahead in economy. And if I can get aged up and catch back up in unit count, I'm going to be just fine. So you can see I'm doing just that. Notice I'm standing kind of in a defensive position, just trying to be patient, trying to keep the raids off me, trying to not get my army caught in a bad spot, you know, by some woad raiders, not trying to play aggressive, not trying to make the big plays. I'm just trying to play patience. And with Greek, that's the name of the game. Playing patient, playing in your base, playing for a long game. The longer the game goes, and the longer you can keep your economy alive and keep getting upgrades and keep getting stronger units, just your overall unit composition pretty much outclasses almost every civ in the game. I would say to an extent it does pretty much outclass every civ in the game. Maybe Egypt's got a better late game. Maybe Immortals, you know, give Persia for a better late game, but a better mid-ish late game, a better realistic late game is pretty much Greek all the way. So you can see I'm just getting upgraded units. I'm just sitting on my resources, keeping my gold safe, just trying to keep an advantage. And you can see I'm building Peltas and Toxotai and Sarasophori. And this is also now where the stable comes into play. So I'm going to pause it here for a minute. I'm going to talk about why the stable comes into play here. Another drink of water. The reason why the stable continues to be good in this situation is for the reason of Prodromos. And the reason, you know, it may seem like, well, Prodromos, why would you want to make Prodromos? That seems silly. Why would you want to make Prodromos? And the reason you want to make Prodromos, or have the ability to make Prodromos, is to stop the raid. If you don't go stable, and you play defensive, true, you probably can get up, and you probably can win the early Age 2 fights, and you can probably be just fine. But what you're not going to have come Age 3 that's going to be very important is mobility. You're not going to have a fast unit that can run around the map and either raid or counter raid. You don't have anything to cut off the raid. And so, although this game, it doesn't really come into play because the game kind of ends at the next fight. If the game were to prolong and I were to need to go out to my next gold mines, say here or here, and his next gold mines are going to be here or here, these outward locations. Having the mobility of Cav and Prodromos to move around the map is going to be huge. And if you don't have the stables up early-ish, you're probably not going to make them, because 250 wood when you're trying to drop TCs and you're trying to make archers and get armory upgrades isn't going to seem like a very high priority thing. So by having a couple stables in the mid game already, you just make your mid game that much stronger. So I wouldn't say it's a reason why I go stables, but I think it's a positive side effect of going early stables, and by making Seri early. You can see that I'm not making many Seri now. I'm making a couple, and they do tank pretty well against bowmen and slingers. They tank pretty darn well. They do, a good job of having good range resist and just kind of standing there. And although they path kind of poorly and have kind of funny animation, and even if they don't do a lot of damage, which they do decent damage, they're kind of just still standing there in the way, making it hard for his units to hit the right units. So yeah, that's just why. I don't know. There's just a bunch of different reasons why stable just feels right, and that's kind of helps it. So, continuing just to play defensive, and when you get to this point, in the game, you want archer upgrades. You want to just keep doing all the same things. You want to get stone. Make sure you don't forget stone. I see a lot of people forget to get stone. When you get to 100 pop, you should definitely have a bunch of people on stone mining stone, because you don't want to hit 140 and be like, oh crap, what do I do? I'm at 140 pop. I don't really want to attack. Maybe I should attack because I can't build anything. And that just kind of sucks. So all my units now are upgraded. I feel pretty confident in attacking here. You can see the Series here. Even though there's just a couple of them, they're tanking so much damage with all the range resist they have, and the Peltast having range resist tanking so much damage, while still having a big ball of Tox in the back that are just doing so much overall damage as well. You can also see the Hoplites standing out front, all having range resist. And I think this is in essence, I'm going to pause it again, I think this is in essence why the matchup is so hard for Celts, is because early game they can't really punish Greeks, and it's really hard to punish. It's really hard, honestly, for any Civ to punish any other Civ early. Maybe you can argue some Civs against Egypt. Well, you can argue some Civs against Egypt can early game punish them. But I would say the other three Civs in general, because of unit train times and because of map sizes and just the general nature of the game, it's really hard to punish Civs early. And because it's so hard to punish Civs early, when Greek gets to this kind of mid-ish game where they're aged up, they've got all their units teched up, they're making Peltast, Hoplite, Tox with a couple Cav, and you can see all of these units here in the front line for me, Hoplites, Peltast, Seri, all have range resist. And what am I fighting against? Pretty much an all-ranged composition. Now, you could argue that Samwise could be making Woad Raiders, but at the same time, in order for him to have mass Woad Raiders, what does he need? He needs more barracks, right? And throughout all of the early game, I had a pretty good number of Tox, and so if he doesn't make slingers, then he might just die in the early-ish game, and so he has to make this many archery ranges, and he has to make slingers early game, or else he just dies to big Tox ball early game and push. And when it becomes more into the mid game, he's got all those archery ranges, which he can make bowmen, which do okay against my infantry line and cav line because they just do straight up high DPS. But what he really needs is he needs mass Woad Raiders, but then he doesn't have that infrastructure to create a lot of Woad Raiders. So having this big tank line here of Peltast, Sarasopha, and Hoplites that all have range resist does really good against Celts in mid game while having a high DPS layer in the back. So you can kind of see I just kind of shove it in here knowing that I've got a superior army, knowing that overall I have a lot more damage output than he does, and knowing that I have a lot better tanking potential as well. So this is kind of closer to the end of the game, and you can see here that there's just no way that he's going to be able to clear all this. When my units are, 1, innately stronger, 2, have an armory upgrade, 3, I have all that range resist out front, and now he's just to the point where Woad Raider's just, he can't get up to a mass, he can't get the charge upgrade, and this is just kind of where Celt just kind of loses this matchup. And it's kind of, I don't know, the games that I've played as Greek against Celts, it just kind of feels like this is kind of the situation in a lot of them. You can't really kill them early, and a lot of people, say, well, how can a game be imbalanced if you can't kill them early? A lot of people's, the way they imagine imbalance is early game you're just able to roll over your opponent, and that's not necessarily the case. The case here is Greek can just kind of play defensive without being punished, and then continue into the mid and latish portions of the game just innately ahead because of their strong units, upgrades, and never really have a weakness or a weak phase. And then if Celts don't play perfectly, they can, of course, just punish them with a better composition in Age 2 as well. So those are all things that I think kind of lead up to a slight advantage for Greek in this matchup. It's just the composition and the mid game just kind of both favor Greek. But that was kind of this matchup in a nutshell. I think the matchups are obviously still developing and will continue to develop, and who's to say that this is set in stone? Who knows? Maybe 3 weeks from now, I'll have a completely different opinion. I doubt that, but it could happen. The game evolves and new stuff becomes popular. All I know is that the more that I play this matchup, the more that I feel like it's hard for Celt. I'm not a great Celt player myself, but I've played against some good Celt players, like I said, and they've all said, this is a really hard matchup. So I'm kind of just going to take their word for it and see how it goes. I do think, however, Celts, if played correctly, can be very, very strong, and one of the best strengths of Celts is the fact that their Age 2 to Age 3 is significantly cheaper than other civs, and they have cheap town centers. So if you combine those two things together, if you're looking at it from the other side, if you're saying, I'm Celt, how do I beat Greek? I think you try and play moderately defensive with longsword raids, and then I think you try and get a moderately early age up, and then you try and get town centers down while still massing and not dying. And I think if you can get that early pop advantage, say you can get up to I don't know, 160, 180 pop, while Greek is still kind of stranded at 140 pop, maybe hopefully without many upgrades, then I think that's when Celt's time to shine is. And then you can get up a big ball of Woad Raiders and just kind of buy time for yourself and just raid around the map and do all kinds of good stuff there. So, but that's for a different video, a different discussion. So this has been kind of the Greek's point of view, the Greek side of this matchup. Hopefully you can take something away from it. Hopefully you can get something useful out. Remember, don't go Rax first. I know a lot of people have seen the Greek 101 video. It's got almost 1,000 views. Thank you all for watching that. But this is a matchup where as Greek I would definitely recommend not going barracks first. I would recommend going 13 pop age up, dropping an archer range, and defending against the longsword raid. I think that's all I got to say about this matchup. I think, what else? This video is probably getting kind of long. I feel like I've been talking a long time. My voice is kind of tired. I've been drinking water, but it's not really helping. So I'm going to cut this video off here. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. If you have any recommendations or requests for what you want on the next video, the next matchup to be, you can drop me a note and say, hey, I'm struggling with this matchup. Can you do this one next? And I would be more than happy to try and work that into the schedule of what's coming up next. So thanks everyone for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Peace out.